I want to talk to you about remembering why you're here. Because a woman in a workshop that I hosted last week, I can't quite get her out of my mind. And I'll tell you the setting. I'll tell you where I was. I was hosting a workshop that was all about talking with people about the shift between writing and publishing. And this really wonderful woman came on the screen, and you could see the light in her face when she talked about her memoir, and she described it with just so much energy. I already know I'm gonna read that book one day. Have you met people like that? And she's telling me about it and how this just book feels like it's coming to life inside her, right? And 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 then she pivots and she gets a little bit quiet and she goes, "But I don't really feel like publishing on Substack." She's like, "What do I do with that?" And I said, "Trust it." And this wave of relief washed across her face. And I can't get her out of my mind. I can't get her out of my mind because I don't think she's alone in the pressures that people feel when something creatively alive is coming through you, and you're being inundated with all kinds of rules and structures and 5 steps to do this. And I wanted to go live today, to invite you to just remember why you're here. Why do you turn to the page? Why are you a writer? Why are you a storyteller? Um, why are you here? Because the last thing that the world wants us to do is trust ourselves. And it doesn't want you to trust yourself when you only have 12 readers. Well, if you're like me and you start publishing on Substack with 2 hours of energy left and an infant that you've just put to bed. The world doesn't want you to trust those spaces where you follow the energy of what's alive in you and trust what is quiet. And I couldn't tell you why I kept writing back in 2022. I couldn't tell you besides the fact that I had to. I was a new mom. I lived in a really different kind of lifestyle. Um, I had been at 7,500 feet elevation, um, as a first time mom with no support, no community. I was all alone. My writing was the only thing I had. Um, and I started publishing on Substack with 12 readers. um, and I knew when I came, I didn't want a 5 step plan. I knew I didn't have the bandwidth for a 5 step plan, this and, um, wonky this. I'd already done all of that in previous professional settings. Um, I needed to come back for myself. I needed to come back to discover something. Um, and I needed to come back as a writer who didn't default into pathways that required me to mask as an autistic person. Um, I think even if you aren't neurodivergent, I think we can all relate to the sense that the thing the world says will work should work if you are talented and lucky enough. But I'm here to tell you that sometimes the plans are wrong. Sometimes the steps don't know who you are on the inside. In my experience, um, most of the plans have never worked. Most of the structures collapse. Most of them push me into um, some weird place where my writing starts sounding like a robot, and I don't know who's actually writing in those moments. in that space of isolation, exhaustion, writing anyway, there was an image that I kept seeing in my head, and it was, I can't remember what book it was in, but Glennon Doyle talks about her life, the sense of her life closing in on her, and she was married to her husband at the time, they had 3 young kids, and she said the only space she had was from 4 to 6 a.m. to write, and so that's what she did. She woke up from 4 to 6 a.m. and she wrote like her life depended on it because she really sensed it did. She sensed the urgency of writing. She sensed the urgency of starting to tell the truth of her life and, um, the urgency of learning how to belong and trust yourself, I think, would be a fair layer to add to her. So I wanna just offer today that if you ever feel like the guidance for writing, the guidance for publishing on Substack, the guidance for how do you be a writer in the world is rushing you, that pressure to rush is also the pressure to self-abandonment. And when you abandon the self, something happens to your voice too. The voice goes somewhere else, becomes choppy, it becomes arm's length. It doesn't have texture, it doesn't have a pulse. And if you're someone who wants to stay in touch with that pulse, that likely means you might have a different way of shaping your path as a storyteller. These aren't the usual sort of live streams that I host. Things are kind of changing for me right now. Um, I want you to remember why you're here. I was driving into the office today and I just started playing through everything um, of what it costs to trust yourself, how it might look foolish to trust yourself, how you might look foolish having to change your mind. I've changed my mind so many times. I've learned that it's part of my process. Whenever structure comes in, we have a conversation. But the ground of where I'm at is I remember why I'm here. And I remember that anytime I have been rushed, there is a poison in that for me creatively. I also want to say that remembering why you're here looks different depending on how long you've been showing up for yourself and how long you've actually acknowledged that you want readers to hear your work. I think my why I'm here got planted in the mountains. And then I started to watch what happened when I gave my voice consistently week over week. And I began to uncover that the why I'm here was blossoming for me in front of me. And there's a particular magic there that I'd like to have more conversations around. Um, I remember why I'm here. I remember why I'm here when um, my publication grows a little bit. I don't think there's anything wrong with feeling like, oh, yeah, that's right. I have something good to share with the world and I want to see people finding it. I'm here because when I pretend I don't need voice to make it through the world, um, it shows up everywhere, y'all. I bet it shows up on the page. I want you to remember why you're here today. And it's okay if you're here because no one else will read what you've written. Find a community where people will read what you've written. It's okay if you're here because you were 8 and you wanted to be a writer, but you were pushed into a different path and you're writing now. I'm glad you're writing now. I'd like to think that you weren't rushed. I'd like to know, and I will say this right now as an editor for over 20 years, I only want to read the writing that was not rushed. Thanks so much. I am a greedy, jealous, right, editor. I want to read the things that took time. I want to read the things that cost something. I think readers want that too. They want writing that costs you something. Um, so I don't know where um, this message will find you. There's going to be a replay later. It's been so nice to see everyone's comments. I'm going to share a replay of this in a little bit. I hope to see some of you in the comments. I think that's a more natural place to share. Tell me why you're here. If you're watching the replay, why are you here? Not just on Substack. And how can we help you remember why you're here? Um, when the pressures, the frameworks, the algorithms, the inner critics get very, very, very loud in our heads. How can we remind you of why you're here? Um, so, yeah, I hope to see some of you all in the comments. I want to know why you're here. And if you're new to this space, this is my co writing studio. It's a little spot that I'm carving out for myself to share more things like this, to create spaces where we work in real time around what gets us stuck so that we can do the slow work on the page. I think that's really important. That's work I love to do. I'd love to do it with you. All right. See y'all in the comments. Bye.